This is the final chapter of The Mysteries of London, volumes 1 and 2. I will tell you, I am still super ticked about the last chapter. Not happy about it. I had to step away and get my upsettedness, making up words now, kind of under control. In my mind, I'm totally rewriting the way that went. We'll see if this final concluding chapter negates the new version of it I made up for myself. So here we go, chapter 259, conclusion. LaFleur was captured, tried, and condemned to transportation for life for the manslaughter of Eugene Markham. Immediately after the trial, the Prince and Princess of Montoni, with the infant Prince Alberto, and accompanied by Signor and Signora Bazzano, embarked for Castelcicala in the Torrione stream frigate, which was sent to convey them thither. We need scarcely say that the faithful Whittingham was in our hero's suite. Eliza Sidney continues to reside at her beautiful villa near Upper Clapton, and her charitable disposition, her amiable manners, and her exemplary mode of life render her the admiration and pride of the entire neighborhood. The Earl of Warrington and Diana dwell in comparative seclusion, but in perfect happiness, and have never once regretted the day when they accompanied each other to the altar. King Zingari departed this life about 6 months ago, and Morcar is now the sovereign of that family in these realms. He has already begun strenuously to exert himself in the improvement of the moral character of his family, and though he finds the materials on which he labors to make an impression somewhat stubborn, he has declared his intention of persevering in his good work. His wife, Ava, constantly wears round her neck the gold chain which Isabella sent her, and night and morning the son of these good people is taught to kneel down and pray for the continued prosperity and happiness of the Prince and Princess of Montoni. Pocock has remained an honest, industrious, and worthy man. He has now a good establishment in one of the most business streets of the city, employs many hands, and has purchased some nice little freehold property in the neighborhood of Holloway, in order, as he says, that he may have an occasional excuse for taking a walk round the mansion, which bears the name of him whom he extols as his savior and his benefactor. And that mansion, to whom does it now belong? It is the property of Mr. Monroe, and will become Ellen's at his death. But the old man is still strong and hardy, and every fine afternoon he may be seen walking through the grounds, leaning upon the arm of his daughter, or of Eliza Sidney, who is a frequent visitor at the place. Ellen is beautiful as ever, and might doubtless marry well did she choose to seek society, but she has vowed to remain single for the sake of her child, who is now a blooming boy, and whom she rears with the fond hope that he will prove worthy of the name that he bears, the name of his uncle, Richard Markham. Skilligalee and the Rattlesnake, long since united in matrimonial bonds, are leading a comfortable and steady life in Hoxton, the business of their little shop producing them not only a sufficient for their present, but also the wherewith to create a provision for their old age. Cranky Jem called upon them on the evening following the death of the Resurrection Man, and acquainted them with the event. From that moment nothing positive has ever been heard of James Cuffin, but it is supposed that he embarked as a common sailor in some ship bound for a long voyage. Henry Holford remains a prisoner in Bethlehem Hospital. He is in the full and unimpaired possession of his intellects, but has often and bitterly cursed the day when he listened to the whispering voice of his morbid ambition. Albert Egerton has already become a wealthy merchant, possessing an establishment at Montoni and one in London, and when sojourning at the former, he receives frequent invitations to dine at the palace. Lord Dunstable has retrieved the errors of his earlier years by an unwearied course of honorable and upright conduct, steadfastly pursued from the moment when he declared himself to have been touched by the words of the Prince of Montoni on the occasion of the exposure in Stratton Street. Colonel Cholmondeley, Sir Rupert Harborough, and Mr. Chichester are undergoing a sentence of 10 years' condemnation to the galleys at Brest for having attempted to pass forged Bank of England notes at a money-changer's shop in Paris. Major Anderson continues to live honorably and comfortably upon a pension allowed him by the Prince. Mrs. Chichester removed about 2 years ago to a pleasant cottage in Wales, where she dwells in the tranquil seclusion suitable to her taste. Filippo d'Orsini has opened an extensive hotel for foreigners at the west end of town and is happy in the prosperity of his business. Lady Bounce was compelled to sue for a separate maintenance about 18 months ago on the ground of cruelty and ill treatment, and in this suit she succeeded. Sir Cherry and Major Dapper continue as intimate as ever and pursue pretty well the same unprofitable careers we have hitherto seen them following. Mr. Banks, the undertaker of Globe Lane, carried his economic principles to such an extent that he fell into the habit of purchasing cloth to cover his coffins at a rate which certainly defied competition. But a quantity of that material having been missed from a warehouse in the city and traced to his establishment, he was compelled, although much against his inclination, to accompany an officer to Worship Street, where the porter belonging to the aforesaid warehouse was already in the dock on a charge of stealing the lost property. Vain was it that Mr. Banks endeavored to impress upon the magistrate's mind the fact that he was as pious and savory an old vessel as ever made a coffin on economic principles. The case was referred to the learned recorder at the Old Bailey for farther investigation, and one fine morning Mr. Banks found himself sentenced to 2 years' imprisonment in the Compter for receiving goods knowing them to have been stolen. Concerning Tomlinson and old Michael Martin, we have been unable to glean any tidings, but in respect to Robert Stevens, we have reason to believe that he manages to obtain a livelihood under a feigned name in a counting house at New York. John Smithers, better known to our readers as Gibbet, is the wealthiest inhabitant of a new town that has risen within these last 3 years in the valley of the Ohio, and in a recent letter to the Prince of Montoni, he declares that he is happier than he ever thought he could become. Okay, so that's the end of the concluding chapter. Like I said, still not happy with the way the plot line with Richard and Eugene ended. How much easier would it have been for him to have survived, LeFleur to still have been captured, to still have been sentenced for attempted manslaughter, and for Eugene and Ellen and Mr. Monroe to have lived at Markham Place. That's how it happened in my mind. He didn't actually die. He survived. He has mended his ways. He's becoming a better person all the time. So if you would like to join me in that alternate version of the ending of this story, you're welcome to, because that is how I'm going to remember it. All right, there is an epilogue left that I'm actually just going to go ahead and read right now. Because why not, right? That chapter we just finished was only a few minutes long. So here we go. Epilogue. 'Tis done, virtue is rewarded, vice has received its punishment. Said we not, in the very opening of this work, that from London branched off 2 roads, leading to 2 points totally distinct the one from the other? Have we not shown how the one winds its tortuous way through all the noisome dens of crime, chicancery, dissipation, and voluptuousness, and how the other meanders amidst rugged rocks and wearisome acclivities, but having on its wayside the resting places of rectitude and virtue? The youths who set out along those roads, the elder pursuing the former path, the younger the latter, have fulfilled the destinies to which their separate ways conducted them. The one sleeps in an early grave, the other is the heir apparent to a throne. Yeah, that's not how I remember it. Yes, and the prophetic words of the hapless Marianne are fulfilled to the latter, for now in their palace at Montoni do the hero and heroine of our tale, while retrospecting over all they have seen and all they have passed through, devote many a kind regret to the memory of the departed girl who predicted for them all the happiness which they enjoy. And that happiness the world has seen no felicity more perfect. Adored by a tender wife, honored by her parents, on whose brows his valor placed the diadems which they wear, and almost worshipped by a grateful nation whom his prowess redeemed, Richard Markham knows not a single care. On her side, wedded to him, to whom her young heart gave its love, proud of a husband whose virtues in peace and whose glory in war have shed undying luster on the name which he bears, blessed too with a lovely boy, whose mind already develops the reflections of his father's splendid qualities, and with a charming girl who promises to be the heiress of the mother's beauty, can Isabella be otherwise happy? Kind reader, who have borne with me so long, one word to thee. If amongst the circle of thy friends there be any who express an aversion to peruse this work, fearful from its title or from fugitive report that the mind will be shocked more than it can be improved, or the blush of shame excited on the cheek oftener than the tear of sympathy will be drawn from the eye, if, in a word, a false fastidiousness should prejudge from its own supposition or from misrepresentations made of it by others, a book by means of which we have sought to convey many a useful moral and lash many a flagrant abuse, do you, kind reader, oppose that prejudice and exclaim, peruse ere you condemn. For if on the one side we have raked amidst the filth and loathsomeness of society, have we not on the other devoted adequate attention to its bright and glorious phases? In exposing the hideous deformity of vice, have we not studied to develop the witching beauty of virtue? Have we not taught, in fine, how the example and philanthropy of one good man can save more souls and redeem more sinners than all the bishops that ever wore lawn sleeves? If then the preceding pages be calculated to engender one useful thought, awaken one beneficial sentiment, the work is not without its value. If there be any merit in honesty of purpose and integrity of aim, then is that merit ours. And if, in addition to considerations of this nature, we may presume that so long as we are unable to afford entertainment, our labors will be rewarded by the approval of the immense audience to whom we address ourselves, we may with confidence invite attentions to a second series of The Mysteries of London, George W.M. Reynolds. The end of the first series. We made it! So that's the end. There was another series entitled The Mysteries of London. It's a totally different story. It starts something brand new. It's modernly referred to as volumes 3 and 4. We're not going to read the next one together, at least at this point, but we did the whole first one, guys. It was essentially 260 chapters. We've been reading this for almost a year. So, yay! Thank you for joining me for that all these months, for having this get together during this really, really strange time that we've had. 2020 and the beginnings of 2021. It's been fun and something to look forward to. Like I said, I'm planning to rewrite that final chapter a little bit in my mind so that it can end in a way that I like better. But the way stories were told in the Victorian era, I actually should not have been surprised that they killed him off. I mean, if you've read Tale of Two Cities, you know that the character who was at once a villain, but his arc is to become a virtuous person, they almost always ended by dying in a virtuous way or in an honorable moment. It was just part of the storytelling approach at the time, but that's not how I'm going to remember it, because that's sad. So thank you for joining me these last few months. If you are watching this after the fact, welcome. I hope you enjoyed it. There you go. That is the end of The Mysteries of London, the first series.